Hey guys, welcome to the hands-on lab on AWS Cognito. In this particular lab, we are going to discuss the AWS Cognito. How do you configure your user pools? How do you integrate it with your application? All those aspects we will cover and we will try to add on. So this is going to be a very interesting session, and this session will be followed by two more sessions. One is based on Azure and the other one is based on Auth 0. They will also have the same level of details. How do you configure it on the cloud dashboard? How do you configure it within the application? How to get your flow working from end to end? That is something that we are going to do in these hands-on labs. I'll request you all to please subscribe to the channel to get updated of all the upcoming videos, and you may also press the bell icon to get the notifications immediately as we post the new video. We are doing this series 100 days of cloud, where we will be putting in some of the major concepts or very interesting concepts on cloud providers. Again, just to highlight, we are not doing this for any particular provider. This is basically more or less targeted on the general cloud concepts to bring that awareness into your mind or into your subconscious, like how to use that. Second part, these are going to be more of the hands-on labs or demos. We will cover some of the basic understanding from the theoretical part, but again, the target and the focus is more on the hands-on part. So let's not waste time. Let's directly jump into the demo. So what I have is like, as you can see, I have opened my AWS console, and to go to Cognito, it's very easy. Either we can directly press searching over here, Cognito, sorry, my bad. Either you can go from here, or very basic. I think most of you already know, just in case you can do it from here as well. So let's move into Cognito. So what this will do is this will take you to your Cognito homepage. If you have defined your pools over here, it will show you the list of pools that you can access. Now, what is a pool when we speak of AWS Cognito? Well, the pool is a set of users. Rather, you can say a single set of database that holds n number of users. That is your pool. It can have 10,000, 50,000, lakhs of users. It can scale automatically without any problems on your part or any concerns from your part, or any action rather required from your part. It automatically scales out. So that is a pool. Let's create a the first step when we move in, we have to create a pool which holds every setting. So it asks me to create a user pool. I'll do that. I'll need to pass on pool name. Let's call it, let's do coding demo pool. I'll press this step. So now if you see over here, we have, okay, let me move back. So what I have done is, like, we can create the default pool with the default set of settings, or we can go into each of these settings and customize those. Now what I will be doing, I will be going into each of these settings just to show you how you can configure different aspects of AWS Cognito when you create a new user base or a user pool. Let's do that quickly. So now if you see over here, we have different combinations. So I can define how do I want my users to join. I can either have my username, or I can have my email and password, with which I want the user to join in. And again, within that as well, there are different options. For example, like if I use a username, there are options also allow user to use with a verified email, verified phone number, or a preferred username that a user can change in future. So that options are also provided over there. Similarly, we have the options for your email and phone number. So if you allow via email or phone number, again, now this is going to cost you out. The reason being, phone authentication could invite some messages, and each of these messages is going to cost you out. Emails would not be, for sure. So you can select this. Either you want to allow email or a phone, or both of those. Or both of those you can allow over here. So let's keep the default at username. The next setting is over here is like enable case insensitivity, that we can, if you want case sensitive, or if you want case insensitive, that you can control from this part. It is already configured. Now, another major aspect or major advantage of Light, you can maintain all your user metadata, personal data that we speak of in the first slide. If you have not seen the first video where we have discussed a brief about this, you can go over there. I'll put the request in the I box. But again, now come in here, you can define all of your custom user data. You can define your address, birthplace, email, and other aspects around here. Likewise, there are some another aspects as well that you can try to configure from the user. So what we will do, we will select some of the options. Let me select your email, let's say father name as well, and gender. And let me select the preferred username and website. So if you see, these parameters are by default provided to the user. These are by a list of default set of parameters, but you can define like which of these is the required one. Now this have to be chosen very cautiously. Reason being, like once this is configured, you cannot change these parameters. It's very difficult. You will get into a lot of trouble. So it's better like whatever you want to do that, whatever you need, you plan it out straight away. Now coming to the next part, we can define custom attributes. So let's define a number. Let's call it user age, and it can have a value of 2 characters or rather 3 characters. There might be some old users over 100 in our applications. Anyways, so again, the next point is something mutable. Mutable means can you change the value in the future point of time or not? So that way we can define all these parameters. So that's the more of a user level configuration. Next we are going to see how do we configure the password policies within the application. So this is again like we discussed, and you are going to see same set of or rather similar set of features across all platforms when we see. Now this is very interesting part. We can define what is the minimum length of password. Let's call it 6. Just for the sake, and do we require number, special characters, lower, upper? Let's change something just to shift it out. Let's remove the special characters, and it will show up once we show the sign-in page. It will reflect over there. Now next part is also very important. It tells us, do you want the administrators to create the users, or the users should be able to sign up? Now, there is a very significant amount of effort that is required when you want the users to sign up, and this is by default provided by the AWS. You don't need to do anything. You can customize, of course, the pages and the layouts. How do you want that? But this functionality is provided out of the box if you want the users to self-register, like in most of the pages. So I'll do that. How quickly should the temporary password set administrator if I have not used? Okay, let's move ahead. Let's keep the defaults over here. So next is the MFA part. Now, if you remember, I told you MFA is going to cost you out wherever there is an SMS that needs to be sent out. But there is an option. You can use the app-based TOTPs or OTPs. You can use the Google Authenticator app or the Microsoft Authenticator, and you can use those apps. So what we need to do is like we can define if those are optional or required. And based on these parameters, we can define like should we allow the SMS or should we allow the time-based OTP passwords as well. I'll press the TOTP-based passwords. Now next action is very important. It tells us how will the user be able to recover their accounts in case their password is lost something. So that you can define if the email is available, the phone is available. There are whole lot of different settings that you can choose from. I'll keep the default over here. Nothing change over here. And which attributes you want to verify, we can do that. We can have the email or the phone or both or none, however you want it, or we can just have like no verification. So again, once we move to the user registration, we will see how can the admins define this and how can the user do that part. But let's move out. Let's move to the next step from there. So these are message customizations, how the messages are being sent to the user. You can use the SES endpoint. There you can define the ARN of the source email address which you want to use. Again, these are the templates for your SMS. Let's keep the defaults over here as well and move to that. Now, tags, most of you already might be using. There are a lot of different purposes that you can use with the tags. So if you want, we can define tags over here. Let's keep it over here. Devices again. Do you want to remember the user devices? Always opt-in or no. We can select if you require. App clients is one of the major concept. We will come into detail once we define and create the user pool. Let's move ahead. Now triggers is again very interesting part. If you see over here over the screen, there are a different set of triggers that you can define. Now triggers are the point of interceptions that you want to do. So basically what happens whenever an action happens, you can define what lambda should be invoked of. For example, whenever a user is coming for a sign up, you can use this lambda function. I have not defined anything as of now, but in case you have, you can just select from here. So those options are there. Likewise, you have a pre-authentication when the user wants to authenticate. If you want to show a custom message, if you want to do a post authentication. So whole lot of options are there. We can have a post confirmation. How should we happen? And different auth challenge and creating the auth challenge. So all those aspects are very well taken care of. They are provided by default. If you want to intercept, if you want to change the process, you can do it from there. Templates for these are available with the AWS samples, but if you want, you can change the points. The flexibility and the extensibility points are already there. So let's move. Okay, so coming to the let's not change anything over here. This page gives me a summary of like whatever I have configured for my application. Let's just create the pool. So this is the part one of the pool that we have to do whenever we want to create a new pool. This part is done, and if you see over there, we have required attributes, and we also have the alias, username, and other aspects that we have also created a user age, a custom attribute that we have taken care of, and other parameters we have declared. Now this is one of the major part that we've already done, but the next part is more interesting. The reason being, there we have to configure the application. Now if you have used any of the cloud-based applications where there is a server to client communication, most of that happens. We need to create an app. That app is basically a sort of server principal that takes care of the responsibility between your backend and the server. So for that, we have to create an app. For creating the app client, we go over here, app client, and just press the button add app. Now add over here. Let's do coding app 1. We can define different parameters. So again, now if you see over here, there are a lot of different things that you can configure. If you want to configure your token timeouts, if you want to days and iteration expiration, every aspect of the token, or at least most of it, is already taken care of. There are different flows and everything that you can also take care of. Again, we will go into more details into that, but more or less these things are already covered over here. Now we'll not let's keep the things constant over here. Let's not change anything and create the app client. Now the app client is created. Again, if you have already used these sort of applications before, you need to capture the client ID and the client secret. That we will do quickly. I will just open my notepad over here. Sorry, and I will keep the client ID, and I will have my client secret just over here. I just need to copy it. So I'll save that. Now this is the page that we have done. Now once this part is done, we need to define how this app client needs to get connected and used. For that part, we have to go into the app integration and app client settings. Let's do that. Okay, so we have over here, and we need to define some of the properties for our app 1 that we have created. To do that, let's quickly add the problem to user pool. That's a default one. We need to provide the local host, as we will be doing for the demos over here. So those URLs needs to be provided to save it. Let's quickly add this. Again, I already know these URL because these are the standard ones. But once we move into the application, I'll let you know how do you find the port numbers, because sometimes the port numbers change and that can cause a lot of problem. These have to match exactly as in the application, otherwise it will not work. Okay. Let's leave. Okay, let's do this as well. I want to have the operation code. Okay, so short summary over here. So if you see over here, we have different auth flows. If you want to get more details on the auth flows, there are a whole lot of videos, resources. You can go over there. Let's talk about here. So if you want, so we can have the authorization code flow, we can have the implicit grant, and we can have the client credentials. Now again, if you select client credentials, it has to be used in exclusive mode. You cannot use authorization code and implicit with it. Let's say example, if I just try to do like this, and if I try to change to client credentials, it will be removed. So it has to be used in exclusive mode. If you already know, client credentials is a sort of auth flow which is used by machine-to-machine communication or server-to-server communication. We don't want to have the client credentials. Client credentials would be required in those areas, let's say, where you want certain aspects. Let's say if you want to change the details for a user, let's say from an admin user something. So those can be taken from here. Okay, so we'll select the authorization code, and we'll select the phone, email, and let's say open ID as well, and profile, and we select all the users, the default ones. And let's select the implicit grant as well. We will be using the code token flow, and let's save it. So this is part one. Again, we need to create the resources. If you want to know about resources, we shall be soon posting a short video over the REST and the resource servers and how to use those. So if you want, you can subscribe to our channel again, I would say, and you will get a notification once we post that. So we should follow standards while applying those. Let me quickly add that. So once we press save, and now we should have it correctly. Let's try to see over here. Yes, now we have it, and I can select these as well for my. So we are done. One more step that we need to do. We need to provide in a domain. So we can do that, and once it is available, we need to save that. So this domain is going to be used for all the user sign in, login, sign out, those sort of operations. This URL would be used. You can of course use your own URL if we have a let's do coding.com our URL, so that we can use directly using the use your domain option. And here the problem is like we have to define the certificates for it. We have to define it in the Route 53. For the sake of time, let's skip that part and let's move to the third and the final step where we would be integrating this within the .NET application. So I have my Visual Studio open, and we need to create a new project, and the template would be the ASP.NET Core web application without any specific parameters. We'll quickly do that. Let it load. So I'll select the ASP.NET Core web application in C#. I press next, and let's call it let's do coding Cognito. We keep the defaults over here. So guys, again, this is the first level of application that I will do. What I will be doing is like I will do some refactoring on this code for the best practices as much like that is feasible and good. That I will do, and then I will post this on the GitHub. But for the sake of this, since we are doing it live, I will just try to get the application working. If you want to have the details, like the details of the application, the working one, and the code, that you can go on to Git and you can check over there. So the application is started, and so the first step that we need to do is we need to add two packages for the authentication. One is your OpenID and one is for cookies. Let's quickly add those first. Just search over here Microsoft.ASP.NET Core Authentication, and here you will see both the packages. One is this one and the other one is this one. So these we need to install. I'll quickly do that. It will take a while for these packages to load and to be added to solution. So right now we are going to do only two aspects. One is the OpenID and the cookie authentication. If you're using the web API as well, then in that case you need to use the JWT bearer as well. That would also be needed. Okay, so this one is installed, and let's install the cookies. I accepted. Sometimes this just nags a lot. Okay, so these packages are being added. Now the next step would be to go into Solution Explorer, and you as already know, we need to plug in the startup file to support the authentication. I'll quickly do that. Let it load. Okay, so we have to first, again, as you already know, many of my friends who are already using the .NET Core framework, first we need to add the services and then we need to use the services. First we will do the add part. So what we can do is like over here we have to go and we have to price services dot add authentication, and here we need to pass in a lambda. We have to define some parameters over there. We'll come to that. Let's add the other aspects first. So then we need to add. Okay. Now we need to pass in the name of the parameters because we are using two different providers. So we need to define which has to be used for what. And again, what I mentioned that we need to pass in the details over here. So that we need to add. Let's once add these first. So I will again use over here the default one, scheme name. Yes, and once this is done, then I need to add the add OpenID connect. Now this is going to be interesting one and a bit large one. Dot scheme, and use the lambda to pass on. Sorry. Yes. So we are done. Now again you see we have two different auth schemes. So one is for the authentication via cookies and the other one is the OpenID Connect. So at this point of time the .NET Core framework generally gets confused and we need to define what to use for what. So let's do that over here, and we need to define the option authentication scheme equal to, again we use the same parameters. So that is the part one. Now this is the one like if the user is authenticated or not. Now the next step, if the user is not authenticated, how does or the application know where to send for authentication? For that we have another aspect called challenge scheme. For that, challenge has to be done by OpenID Connect, so we use that. And the last part, once it is moved out and the login has happened on the identity server, now it is coming back. How should the user sign the username? So for that we have the authentication dot default sign in scheme. So again for that we will use the authentication. Yes. So that completes our first part where we define. Now we need to configure the OpenID Connect parameters. Okay, so the first part is option dot client ID, and we will use it from where, and we have it over here. Okay. Now the next step would of course be putting in the client secret, and again I will just quickly pick it up from here like this. Okay, done. Now we need to define in the authority. Now this is a very interesting part for the authority. It has a very specific format. So it's something like Cognito -IDP dot US, your region name, then your AWS Amazon AWS.com, then followed by a user pool ID. Okay, I've copied it. I already have it, saved it over there. You can refer to documentation if you need more details. But again, now we need to suffix it with the user pool ID. So that you can grab from here, which is US West 2. Okay. Now the interesting part is like this is I have copied for West, so I need to change my region to US West 2. That you should always take care of that. Sometimes it causes a lot of problems and unnecessary troubleshooting. What happened, where happened, so those sort of things. And earlier I was in North Virginia, but right now in Oregon, so we have US West 2. Okay. So this comes this part. Now we need to define the scopes. And what should we add? We add OpenID, and we have profile, and we have email, and let's quickly grab the other ones that we have captured. So we will go over here and app settings. So we have phone, email, OpenID, profile, and let's add these two. I'll just copy it. I'll copy it to prevent any error. And the other one was a yes. Let's do one thing. Let's rather add only one, and let's try to see like what happens. So once this is done, another thing is like we need to use these tokens further into the application. So like what happens? These tokens comes in, the user is signed into the application, but there will be several scenarios when you need to authenticate further to or back to AWS for some user metadata or custom endpoints. For that thing, we need to save these tokens, and that can be done with this. Another aspect that we need to take care of is to how to identify the name of the user. For instance, like say if user 1 or user 2 has logged in those cases, we need to get like what is the user, what is his username, and those sort of things. So by default, .NET Core has a mechanism of using the user.identity.name, if you already know. So, but that is the default name or the standard name, username convention standard is not being followed by Cognito. So for that we have to define the parameters. Let's do that. Token validation parameters equal to options dot token validation and here, and name is something like Cognito. So this will add the user. So we done with this part as well. So we need to configure certain more parameters for logout and other functionalities because they are not being covered directly by the AWS Cognito. So that we need to sort of patch it out. But before that, let me quickly show you the way OpenID works. So we have this URL which is called the authority. Sorry. And what we do is this provides all the details that are required for the user or for the system to work upon. So what we do is there's a standard endpoint. You need to type dot well known and followed by OpenID configuration. And what this will open is this will open a JSON page. So let me quickly zoom it. So this contains the details of all the endpoints that the application must reach in order to perform. For example, if I need to do authorization for a user, in that case I need to use the authorize endpoint. Likewise, if I need to validate the signature that is being signed off, that I can use the jobs URL from here. Likewise, if I need to get the token, I can use this. So OpenID Connect by default provides this, and it is always available after the authority followed by .well-known / OpenID configuration. So you can append this to any of the authority URLs and you will see the details of the server. So by default, OpenID Connect also provides a lot of details around logout, sign out, and several other parameters which are not provided over here. So for that part, what we need to do is we need to add the, for example, like if I log out from the application, I also need to log out from the Cognito servers. For that part, there is a call that goes from my application, a logout request that goes from my application to the Cognito server. It logs out and then it returns back. So those areas we have to cover up. We'll do that, but let's try to quickly patch the application to see like if the current code is working or not. So what we will do is so if you already know, we have this default layout page that act as a template for all the other pages. So we will do some changes over here. Let me quickly add this, and if you already have used, there is an option over here, user.identity is authenticated. This tells me if my user is already authenticated within the application or not, and if it is already authenticated, then this particular segment is called and rendered on the page. Otherwise, it is skipped out. So I'll copy it and let's change this a bit. I don't want any of these changes. Let's remove this. And what I want is, let's move this as well, and I just wanted to show the username. So if a user is logged in, the username should show over here. Secured area. Now, if you've used .NET Core, you know, like if the default authentication is very easy. We don't need to do a lot of patching around here. So what we will do is we go into the home controller and we just need to add one line of attribute here over here. Yes. So this will, so what happens is like whenever the request comes to this action, it will see like if the user is authenticated or not. If the user is authenticated, it is allowed to move in. We have not defined any roles or policies. We have not defined in simple terms any authorization so far. So if the user is authenticated, it will be allowed to move in. If it is not, in that case, again, as we have seen over here, the application, first it will try to see like, it will see what is my default challenge scheme, and once that is identified, then what is my default sign-in scheme. Based on those, it will allow the user to log in. So let's quickly go over here and try to see. One more thing, I will not run this application in the IIS, but rather in the console. The reason I tell you, because if we run the application in the console, in those cases, my properties launch settings are used, and it also gives me more control over the environment. So you can see over here, we have the default port, so we can use this as well, but I would rather be using my console settings, which are defined over here. So this is the endpoint HTTP1. So earlier I told you like from here we can identify what would be my host name and the URL. And again, what we have to do is like we have to go into my where? Yeah. So we have to go over here, and within the application, we have to define these sign-in URLs. Sorry, not here, but rather here. Yeah. So here you can see. Okay. So there is one problem over here. The HTTPS port number is 5001, and I have used 5000. So let's me quickly change that. We identified, otherwise it would have been a problem. So if any of these parameters that you have defined that doesn't match or doesn't exactly the same, in that case you will get an error. And believe me, Cognito is very bad in error representation. It doesn't give any values. It is very difficult to identify those errors. If you have some better understanding on how to identify Cognito related errors, please post in the comments box. Be helpful. Thank you. So let's try to quickly run this. It will take a while for the first time. So it's already started. Let's try to see. And within the application, if you see over here, we have the secured area. Now, if we go over here, we should see a login page ideally. Let's see. And as I told you, there are a lot of problems and it is very difficult to identify. Okay, the problem is, I think I know. Let me quickly see the problem part. Yeah. Okay. The problem is we have not, I think we have not defined the response type that we need to change somewhere over here. Yes, that is missing. So let's add that response type, and that would be the code. So if you don't know, you can get across and try to capture like what are different response type for different OAuth flows. We shall be covering those in next coming week. But if you want, for now, you can quickly go there. We will be covering those areas for security in together with the JWT and others. So subscribe, I would say. So let's try to run this again. And now, what should happen is I should see a user login page. Yes. So we have the user sign-in page. Let's try to quickly sign up. And if you see all those areas or fields which we have set mandatory, those are shown up over here. And if I try to do sign up, it will tell me like which one is mandatory. So let's so it is asking me for preferred username because we have selected over there. This could be changed. And again, if we go over here and if we try to see if we can change the attributes, you would see that these are all logged. So that's what I mentioned. It's very difficult or rather impossible to change these attributes. I'm not sure if there are some backend APIs with which we can do that, but from the front end, it's not possible from the default dashboard. So be cautious once you create those. So family name, password is something I will die in 123. So this is if you remember, we have defined different policies, and all those policies are being fired over here. We need to define lowercase letter, number, uppercase, and it should be 6 digits. So I will add something over here. I'll do a sign up. Okay. So I'll confirm my account. So if you remember, I told you like we have to first add the services and then use the services. So we need to use that as well. So that the default endpoints are being captured. It should work. Let me quickly change that. And now it should work. So we might need to log out and log in. The reason being that the credentials are being captured when the user logs in, and we have already done the login cycle. So yes, as I mentioned, so we need to log out. I will quickly show you in the incognito mode. Okay, so here also we have logged in. So let's try to add the logout and functionality, and then so first we need to do a sign in, sign out from our cookies, and then from the authentication. So once we do that part, now we also need to link it. So for linking it, we will add another link over here, just like this, and this should show once the user is logged. Let's try to do it now. It should work. Let's see. So this is one of the major problem. If you are using any of the cookies related, or let's say token related functionality, and you have already done the logging part. Now that part, so you see the logout option has already come. That means that we are already in this particular loop over here. That means the user is authenticated. But this part is not being rendered because this is blank, and the reason for this is not set. And what happens is, like, once we log into the application, at that point of time when we receive the tokens, from there we do the name claim map, and at that point of time, if it is not fetched, it is not set. So for that part, it's very easy. Just need to do a logout and login again, and it will log out. Let's try to do that. Again, I again forget. Okay. So again, the next problem that I mentioned is, like, we don't have the default sign out functionality in the Cognito. It is not provided from the discovery endpoint. So what we need to do is, like, we need to custom define it. And what I will do is, like, I already have an endpoint. I will just try to quickly. We are already running ahead of stretch of time. We are already running stretch of time, so I'll quickly try to do that. Basically, what we need to do is, like, we need to define over here options dot on events equal to new, and here we on redirect to provide for sign out. So you see over there. So this is the point that we need to capture, and we like context and something like this. And or is the problem? Okay, it's not open. That will be. So what I'll do, let me quickly capture it. I already have the logout URL. So what we are doing over here is, like, we can define different events that fire when a particular operation happens. So in this case, but with regard to OpenID Connect, there are multiple events that we register. So what happens, like, we define that when the redirection is being taken care for the sign out, we are modifying that particular path. Since that URL is not available from the discovery endpoint, we are custom defining it. So the discovery, the part is very simple. So we need to have the domain name that we have our application, followed by the logout, and then the client ID. So again, guys, this client ID and all these details, they should be taken care from the configuration. For this application, I have put it over here. It's a bad practice. Please move it to the configuration part whenever you use in your application. So what I will do, let's quickly change the client ID first, and then we will cover up the URL. Let's take it from there. So for getting the URL, you can directly go over here and you can copy it from here. So if I go over here now, yes. So this will work out. I don't need, and we define a logout URL. Logout URL is your domain name followed by the logout operation and then your client ID. Client ID is something like for the app, and then setting parameter that we need to pass. So there are two options. One option is log out and then come back to my home page or whatever page I define. And the other option is log out and it requires another user login. So for that part, we need to define the logout URI. And if you recall, we already defined it over here. Let me quickly show that. So in the app line settings, if you go over here, so this is already defined, HTTP 50001. So what I've just tried to capture it from here to completely match it out, and logout URI is this. So there are some cases where let's say you are on page ads and you want the application to, whenever the user logs in or logs out, it should again go back to that particular page ads. So that part is taken care of. We are not taking care of that part in this particular demo, but yes, it can be considered, and I have defined the pseudocode for that over here. You can play it as you like for this part. Now coming to the next part, what we do is like based on the URI that we have generated, we just redirect the user and we set the handle response. So what this should do is this should redirect me for the logger. Let's try to see like what happens. So the last major chunk that we need to take care of or cover in the application, and with this I think the more or less most of the functionality is covered out. Username part is pending. Let's try to see. It should be fixed with this part. Let's try to see. So I'll do a logout. And again, I forgot the username, so that I need to capture from here. Why happens to me every time? Short-term memory loss. Yeah. So I'll do a quick login, and I can my very specific password, and I can do a sign in. And you should see a very good username over there. Yes, so that is my username that I have logged in. So this covered this part. Now one more part I like to show you is something around the access tokens, because Auth is all about the access tokens and how are they being forwarded. So let's do that part. It will not take more than a minute to do that. So what I will do is like we need to inject one more services. Let's do that. I need to pass in services dot add HTTP context accessor. Once this is done, I will go into my privacy, which is not so private but confidential page, razor view, and I need to inject over here. So inject is like a normal dependencies. In case you don't know, you can define the component like just like you do in your actions. You can define here as well. So that I will set and remove this and remove this. Okay. So that's the H2 access. Let's add a text area. Rows and false. And what we'll do is like we will use the HTTP context accessor dot HTTP context dot sync, and here we need to pass on access. So now either we need to await this request. This is an async operation, or let's try to do that. And we'll do a try to copy this for the other token as well. I will show you the ID token and more or less similar. Okay, let's try to see like what. So if you remember, in the starter file, we have set the save tokens to true. And what this does, it saves those tokens what are received from the identity provider, and which is in case AWS Cognito. And we should see those. Let's see. Okay, so what does this say? No HTTP context accessor. Ah, my bad. Sorry. The problem is it just don't work like this. It basically injects the interface, not the complete class. No, this will work. A lot of these implementations, interfaces, and classes just mix up everything. And here you see. So these are the tokens that are being written, and just to validate those, we will quickly copy these and see what value we have. If you see over here, this is basically the access token, and it has all the scopes that we have asked for. That is our leaves.cancel, OpenID profile and email. And this has the username, the client ID, and the subject ID. Now, just to validate this, we will match it with the identity token as well, which is right here. And here you can see it has all these details that we have asked: gender, male, username, token ID, family name. So that all those details we can use from here. So that's it, guys. This is how it works out. I will post this on GitHub and share the link in the description, which you can use from there. Do use it, and it is not an end-to-end or a very optimized code, but it will certainly give you a very high level of picture how to get the themes working. And once you have a level of application or a flow working, of course, I am sure like you would be able to extend that. If you have any questions, you can contact me. You can write those in the comments, or you can directly email me out, or just reach out to us. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for the video. And remember, we will be covering a similar hands-on lab for end-to-end integration for Azure AAD and Azure AAD B2C. So we will try to cover the B2C part, which is more from the end user perspective. But again, more or less the things would be same for the Azure AAD for the enterprise as well. So that we will cover in the next video that we will have, and further to that we will be covering the Auth 0 implementation, which is also one of the very prominent cloud identity providers. So guys, please do subscribe and press the bell icon, and you will get notified when the next video comes. Thank you very much.